So Russ, biostimulants, bit of a snake oil reputation. We do lots of small pot trials and we do some strip trials, but what have you done and how do you use them?
Well, I mean, I sort of started to look at it because it looks interesting, and like the whole thing is trying to find what works and what doesn't, and the conditions which make it work and why you should use them. And like all these things, the real challenge is knowing when not to use them. And so there's lots of products in the marketplace, but the real battle is finding ones that actually work. Yeah. And I think that's the important thing for me in terms of, it's the same, we are with fungicides, we are with herbicides, and it's probably been a bit more cloudy with the biostimulant sector if you look over the past 10 years, where there's lots of offerings out there, but it's understanding which ones that you're going to get a return on your investment and actually work for you.
Yeah. So let's say Union product Luxor come along and we in Union talk about the results we've got. What would you do to try and convince yourself on your farm that they work for you?
Well, for me, we do a lot of trials here on various things, so varieties, fungicides, and I put biostimulants in that same category. You need to, or say for me, is that we'll do a treated and untreated section, but not just one. We'll do it in several different fields. Yeah. We'll compare it as part of a program and part of building a program as well. And we've had some really good data with that over the past few years. And the good thing about that is it's given me confidence that I can use a product which I know will work and will get a return on. And that's been the really good thing about it, is we've seen that consistently. Yeah. Where sometimes some products you can have, they can be really effective one year and not the next. And to have something which I know works for us is really valuable.
So Russell, Luxor product that we use quite a bit in terms of helping was phosphorus, getting phosphorus from the soil. Have you tried it on the farm and what have you found? Yeah,
so we're typical heavy clay farm. We've sort of got reasonably high levels of K, but our P levels will be sort of 1s to 2 minuses. And so it's understanding in terms of what we need to do to make sure we've got enough in the plant and getting that bonus. So what we did here is with the first year we looked at Luxor, we're looking at Luxor in isolation on its own and looking at it compared to DAP at 200 kilograms a hectare. And then we're seeing what those results were, and that's really encouraging. The first year we were seeing an uplift on average over a tonne a hectare from both types of products. Yeah. But the key bit is there's a big differential in cost, and to be able to put on and understand that what it's doing, it's helping you probably use your resources better with a foliar product than having to sort of go down the route of the DAP. And we've overlaid Luxor over the top of DAP as well, and we've seen an uplift of that. So for me, it's building myself a really good library of understanding where it can work and getting something that's, again, cost effective, I think, for the cost of what it is and the return on investment we're getting and the responses we're getting. It fits in really well with our program, and we can change that and tailor that depending on the season. So sometimes we may use Calphyte plus Luxor if we want to push roots, trying to get the roots working as well. But again, the cost is similar in terms of when we're applying, so we're not suddenly ramping the cost up, we're just adjusting the rates according to what we're doing for the season.
Okay. So Russ, you said sometimes you might use Luxor in place of DAP and sometimes you might use it with. Kind of how do you make that decision on the farm?
Well, depending on what the crop might be in terms of, do I want to get some early nitrogen on, and that balance of working with DAP works quite well. And where I might use it in without the DAP is where I think actually if our soil indices are, I think what we've learned with it is that we can live effectively with an indices 1 soil and have a product that will work effectively and deliver the same or better than a DAP application. So we're not relying on it totally every year, but it allows us to make it fit as part of a plan of what we do nutrition-wise over the years. And it means that we're not having to think every year about loading up with some form of bagged phosphate, which is a considerable jump in price to what Luxor is in terms of where its placement is. But for us, it's a product that we've seen those results consistently each year, and I think that's the really valuable message in terms of we're seeing that response each year nearly, which is really refreshing.
In terms of doing the Luxor with Calphyte, would that be on sort of second weeks or something that needs a help with some rooting early on? Or
that's where I see that particular combo being really important, or if you get off the back of a year where you think you've got a bit of a compromise with rooting. Yeah. So
maybe a wet spring or a dry spring. we seem to have both, don't we? So,
A bit of everything these days, isn't it?
I mean, we don't seem to have a normal spring anymore, do we? So,
No, I don't think if someone said, what's the normal year? I think we've had so much fluctuation in the past, 7 or 8 years. I don't know what a normal year is anymore, but you have an idea of what you might be being faced with, I think. So if you've got late draw crops, if there's been a lot of moisture and you think the roots haven't really pushed down, it's different to an autumn where it might be a little bit dry and the roots have had a chance to go down. So in that situation there, if I think our rooting is quite good, I'll probably just stick with a Luxor.
yeah.
If in a season where I think we need to give our roots a better chance of accessing stuff, that's where I'll look to do the combination of the two products.
So Russell, you mentioned the farm's high K. It's interesting. I know you've done some work with Holy K and had some positive results. So, what have you done, and why do you think you've been getting the positive results you have?
I think the challenge always comes, particularly if you do like leaf tissue tests. Invariably, you always see K being quite low, but the problem with it is I don't think you could ever put enough on to match that demand, and that becomes a challenge. So we started looking at it this year, particularly where there's a bit more stress around, and again, where we've got sort of second wheats and third wheats, looking at going with sort of Holy K twice to see if that will give us a boost in effects. And we've certainly seen it with spring cereals that one application has a good result, but that second application then suddenly seems to give it a real boost, and that's where we've seen it be really effective. Spring barley and spring wheat have been two good examples of that, where we probably use it quite regularly, and now we're just looking at seeing if we can adopt it a bit more again, depending on the season and situation for winter wheats.
So another one I know you've looked at is a 3LO T6P. So I guess you've been using that on cereals and maybe some other crops.
Yeah, we know it works in winter wheats, sort of when you sort of get to that sort of growth stage 59 timing with the ear spray, instead of trying to push that carbohydrate in the ear. So we're looking at sort of trying to push as much yield as we can in it, and also try and help with bushel weight. So we know we've had some good results with that. And then we're looking into winter beans as well, particularly in a period of stress. And again, it comes back to looking at timing and appropriateness of timing. So we're looking at sort of doing some stuff earlier on to try and boost phosphate in it. But then this year we've had a dry year, particularly when you come into flowering. We've looked at going with sort of T6P plus some amino acids at that sort of timing there, which we think is probably quite a high period of stress for the crop, just to see if that's going to have an effect on it going through later on.
Yeah, that's quite interesting, because even if the crop's not stressed, and we've had plenty of weather stress, but that's a physiological stress. It's going, flowering is going to be quite stressful physiologically, so it makes sense, isn't it? Something that can help with stress and
exactly.
do that movement of sugars and stuff is useful. Yeah.
I always think the hardest bit when it comes to stress is sort of trying to understand, when that's going to be. I think that's the biggest challenge in terms of sort of you're trying to sort of predict when you might get a stressy period. I bet invariably sometimes what happens, you might get some weather that relieves it and it's not a problem. Yeah. But I think this year's probably been a bit challenging until recent times we've had some rain.
Yeah. I mean, you've got some nice heavy dirt. Would it ever be a bit where you say it's too stressed, nothing's going to help, I guess?
Well, I think you've got to be realistic.
Yeah.
I think your eyes on the crop tell you quite a lot. And if you think, well, actually, it's sort of, if it's gone beyond the point you think you can help it, I think you've got to, again, like any input, you've got to weigh out whether it's actually worth doing or not. And I think we're pretty fortunate on these type of soils here where they will hold on a bit longer. But I guess on probably some sharper, more challenging soils, it's going to more than be on before you've gone too far with stress. It's a bit like sort of trace elements, isn't it? And if you see a deficiency, you're probably already a little bit too late, and it's probably the same with these type of products.
Something I often get asked by farmers is, was it statistically significant? That's an easy one, isn't it, to ask? But also, does it work every time? Which makes me smile, because even if you're doing a fungicide trial, you don't get a statistically significant result in a dry year, do you? Yeah. So no. So biostimulants can be slightly up and down in terms of yield responses, but from what you're seeing, how you're using them, and you've learned where to use them, you're getting consistent benefits.
Yeah, I am. I'm happy with. I mean, there's two things with those type of products: are they giving us a response? If it's not too costly in terms of what you're trying to do, and I think that's the important thing. If it's priced reasonably well, it's not too bad for you. So actually, that's a good addition to put in. And then you get the response off the back of it. It gives you a lot of confidence to continue using it. And again, the important bit about knowing when to use it, it's equally as valuable to know when not to use it. And I think that's the key bit about making that or distinguishing between the two parts is the conditions which you think actually I probably don't need to use it this year, but having that confidence behind it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the great things with all the products we mentioned come from Union. Actually, there's some of the work they're doing in the background. Even though we know how some of these things work with the nutrigenomics, we're actually going to learn even more some of the science behind why some of these things work or when they work as well.
Yeah, and I think that's like when any product comes forward. I mean, you take a fungicide that's gone through years of data and trials, and you've seen the results come through. And particularly when you come to this sort of biostimulant sector, I think the value of that research that's gone on beforehand, stuff that's been properly peer reviewed and had a good period of testing, is really, really valuable.
Yeah, and it's still going on. Still learning how to get more and more out of these things.
Yeah, exactly. Which is like all these things. Something always changes over a period of time, bit conditions or whatever, and that's the thing is to have. It's that bank of knowledge you want to be able to draw on in terms of actually having that sort of point of contact where you can say, actually, what should I do in this season?
Maybe how we farmers might have to change or does change. So
yeah, very much so.
The more we understand the products, the more the better, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that, definitely.
So in terms of phosphorus, we talked about Luxor and Calphite, but I know you've also looked at Phosphorus Liberator. So have you seen some good results with that?
Yeah, so we've used, again, I'm always interested in trying products. I mean, like anything, I think you shouldn't sit on your laurels and should always just see what's available out there. So we used it this year. It tank mixes really easily, which is always great. I think with any product you get, it makes life easier. We saw a bit of a response last year in our spring cereals to it. And then this year we're looking at it in winter wheat, so an autumn application. Goes on quite easily. But we're also overlaying that with maybe some Luxor Calphite as well to see whether there's, again, is there a response on top of that, a bit like we do with DAP as well. So I think initial impressions, it looks like it's got a bit of a response to it, but I think we need to probably learn a bit more about it. But it could have a place, particularly in the autumn in terms of when you can apply it. It's got quite a wide ranging window.
Yeah, so you can use it from pre-emergence, early post-stem, yeah.
So which is particularly useful, I think, in terms of again, you're starting to think again ahead of sort of stuff like a second cereal or something where you think you may have a bit of a compromise with things that could have a useful place in that part of the rotation.
Great, thanks.